Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brooke, and today we are going to talk about red flags for myself personally when shopping at plant stores. I had an experience just recently at a plant store, and it was throwing me all sorts of red flags that I didn't listen to them. And I found out quickly that I should have listened to them because I have a plant now that is in a baggie. I have 3 plants that are now in baggies. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what my red flags are for plant stores, purchasing plants in general, and hopefully help you out this spring when you go into plant stores and maybe see a plant you like, but maybe you see some of these signs, maybe it's not a good idea. If you are new here, this channel is where I talk about houseplants and do DIYs. So if that interests you, be sure to subscribe so you can see more videos like this one. And if you are a recurring viewer, thank you so much for coming back and watching another video. I tried to do this video once and I think that it was just too close to the incident. So I kind of went on a rant. So we're going to try it again, and I'm going to be more concise, and I'm going to actually, be more helpful. So this is what we're talking about today, is red flags for plant stores. So I currently live in Texas. I came from Washington State. I'm from Illinois though, but came from Washington State where there were a ton of plant stores like all around us. I mean, I could walk like a couple blocks down and be at 2 of my favorite plant stores. And so they were just like in plenty, but they're not all created equal. They had some that were just no goes for me. And so I kind of quickly figured out through my plant journey what to look for and where not to buy from. Based on in-person experiences. So that's what we're going to talk to you about today, is like in person, how do you choose a plant store, and maybe like how do you not choose a plant store? So hopefully we can get this out. So first off, I just went to Houston a couple weeks ago, and I am never down there. So we are closer to the Dallas area, and I have no reason to go to Houston, and so I don't. But there is a large plant store down there, and I have seen it online a lot, and I thought, let's go try it out because I'm in that area. Never, don't usually have a reason to go there. So let's go see what they have, because it looked to be like they carried a lot of rare and uncommon plants, and they did, and it was awesome. Like they had so many rare and uncommon plants, and it was really fun to see all of them. But as I walked around the store, I just got some red flags that in the past, when I've purchased from like stores like that, have had bad experiences. And so I ended up having not a great experience with one of my plants. The people were extremely nice. The staff was very nice. The store again was great. It has nothing to do with like the people. It's just the plants. So through the years of buying plants, I've kind of singled out places that I won't go to if I've visited. And so in Washington, I did have several areas or several plant stores that I would not go visit based on past experiences and like consistent experiences of not getting healthy plants. So like one, for instance, I loved the shop. It was so beautiful and like super fun to go into, but I had purchased from them multiple times and gave like multiple chances, and the plants always came out with pests. And so this is what I've now come to like realize and look for when I'm shopping in plant stores. Number 1, what do their other plants look like? Like take inventory of all of the plants around their shop. Do they look well maintained, or do they look dead and not taken care of? So at this plant store in Washington, that's what they looked like. The atmosphere was really cool, but all the plants were primarily dead. And so that should be a big key right there. If the plants look really unhealthy, like yellowing leaves, browning leaves, if they're leaving legitimate dead plants in with the other plants that are like alive and healthy, it's going to be a no for me, because that means that you're not paying attention to the plant. Number 1, the plant could even have pests. It could be a pest attacking it. And so that means that it could then, spread it to other to other plants. And it's just like a general, like, you must not care about your inventory very much and like selling it, because you're just letting it die. And so that can come with a lot of issues for you then. If you get a plant from a store that has neglected it or has overwatered it, and you see a lot of yellowing plants, like just dying yellowing leaves, yellow leaves are a sign of the plant, like, going through its normal life cycle. That's one thing. But if the entire plant is like yellow and a lot of the plants around it are yellowing, then it tells me that they're not watering properly. So they're over watering. And then you're going to bring that home and you're going to try to balance it out, and you're going to try to, correct the issue. And it could already have root rot, it could already have fungus gnats, and the plant could just completely die off and you have to restart it. So at that point, you're buying a dead plant. What is the point? And so that's kind of what I have experienced in the past. It's great to rescue a plant at Lowe's and Home Depot. But if I'm going into a plant store and a nursery, like specifically for houseplants, then I'm expecting that plant to, somewhat survive. And so I have had that experience where they just didn't survive. So I've also had an experience where I looked around in the same plant store, looked around, and I did end up purchasing this plant, and it had spider mites, like completely infested with spider mites. And I should have known that because the plants that were around it also had spider mites. So really look at the plant, look for little webbing around the bottom of it, around the leaves and the foliage area. It's one thing to have like spider webs on the bottom. I have seen that in plenty of nurseries because spiders are beneficial. They do help kill pests, but it's when it's in the soil and when it's like going to the leaves and it's like, webbed itself really far around it, like with these really tiny thin webs. That's usually a sign of spider mites. You can then look in the soil, and if the soil is moving, put the plant back. Put the plant back. That's what I've learned. Is like, I have had it many times where I'm like, no, I could rescue this plant. No, put the plant back, Brooke. It doesn't work. And so at the same plant store in Washington, I just had that experience over and over again. And I stopped purchasing from them. I still went to visit them, but I just stopped purchasing plants from them because, again, it was a consistent, just poor plant management and poor quality of plants. That was, my experience in Washington, and it's been the same here, down here. I have visited plenty of plant stores in the Dallas area. There is one specific plant store that I think is really pretty. I have visited multiple times, but I don't often buy plants for them. If I've ever bought plants for them, maybe once. And so it's the same issue. The plants, when you look around, start to look healthy and pretty overall, like kept well. And then you start to kind of dig deeper, and one entire section multiple times had spider mite infestation. I mean, it was so bad. And so that was like multiple times of seeing that. So the last time going, the entire section had just been overtaken by spider mites. And so that's not good, because then all of those plants were infested, and you do not want to bring those into your home. And that was an obvious. My husband saw it immediately, and he's like, what is all over this? And kept picking up the plants in that section. I was like, put them down, stop touching them, because it was just all of it. And so it's like, okay, these plants aren't well maintained and they're not being looked at. And so to bring that back into your home, again, like, you totally can rescue it if you want, but some of these plants were more rare plants and uncommon plants. And it's like, I'm not spending that money on a spider-ridden plant to bring it under the home only to, try to combat the issue and possibly just end up losing it altogether and having to restart. It's not worth it. There are other plants that you're going to find. You will find it again, just leave it. And so one of those plants was a wish list plant, and I did end up getting it at this shop because the plant that I had seen it for 2 years. I'd visited this plant store in Dallas. In 2 years, consistently, same thing. And so I purchased one plant from them, and over the 2 years. And this wish list plant I have not seen hardly ever. And so it was a real bummer that it was completely infested with spider mites each time. And so I did end up finding it at this plant store for far better cost. And so that's the thing too. A lot of these uncommon plants, if you're like, no, I'll take it no matter what, the uncommon plants are coming down in price. They're being more readily available. And so I would just put a pause on it and wait, because there is nothing worse than getting a wish list plant and then it just going south because of a previous pest issue. So that is like, red flag right there. And then red flag also is, again, looking at their plants, and if their soil is extremely saturated, look for fungus gnats, because again, the problem of you bringing it home, fungus gnats, happen. It's fine. Pests happen, but it's something that if I can try to avoid bringing it into the house, I absolutely will. And so I will not purchase. But, you can look at the soil. If it starts to move around, there's something in there, just put it back. Just leave it alone. Put it back. If, the leaves are super curled, again, we already talked about the yellowing and the browning leaves, but if they're super curled, like I saw at this plant store near Houston, they were all underwatered and like severely curled, which can also be an issue. Either you can get dry rot from that, and then it's going to be a process of trying to rehabilitate those roots. And so if you're, want to be that awkward person, if there's a plant store that it just looks iffy, I will pick the plant up out of its pot. I can't do it with this one because it's still wet, but if you pick it up out of its pot, you can look at the root system, because this is the other thing. Again, like they may look good on top, but if you see a lot of fungus gnats in it, a lot of movement, if it's super saturated, like soaking wet soil, or if it's sitting in water. I've seen, oh gosh, I have seen this in plant stores where they'll put a bucket underneath a bunch of plants and they'll just sit in there. And I mean, these things are soaked and they're not bog plants, okay? And so it's like, if somebody if somebody talks to me as like, oh, that's, bottom watering, yes. But literally, like I have been into a plant store where I've gone back in and it's the same plant sitting in the same looking water, gross brown water. I'm just not about that. And so it can create a lot of rotting issues. And so the worst thing, I've had this happen before too, is I've not checked the roots and I've got them home and I've pulled them out of the soil to like pot them up or transfer them, and there's no roots because they're completely dead. And that is like, that's probably the worst, because at that rate, it's kind of like no coming back, because if the roots are just completely gone, yes, there's foliage, but there's nothing for the foliage to hold on to the nutrients and to grow further. And so it's pointless to me. And so I have been that person where I will pick the plant up and I will pull it out of the pot and I will check the roots, because I don't want to get home with either just a bare plug, because I've had that happen. That's like a Lowe's thing. Lowe's and Home Depot, no offense. Lowe's and Home Depot, they're not for plants. That's not what they're there for. But multiple times on Lowe's and Home Depot have I gotten plant home and I've pulled it out and there's no roots. It's like they popped them all in, like the cuttings, and hoped for the best, hoped that they would root, and then never did. So yes, I am that person in the plant store that will pick a plant up out of the pot and just check the roots. And I think that if you're going to buy the plant, like that's viable. Like, I'm not viable, but that is your prerogative. I feel like you should be allowed to do that, just to check on the plant to make sure that it's okay. Now, there are plant stores that I've been to plenty of times, and I just am comfortable and know that I have purchased great plants from them and I have no issues. And so I'm not going to sit there and check all of their pots and, roots and stuff. But if it's a brand new plant store, like I will have no shame in picking them up and just checking it just to make sure. Those are my red flags. It's like the yellowing and brown leaves, if like the plants are just completely dying. That's just such a bummer, because again, it's like, it's your inventory. And so that's your business. You'd think that you would pay attention to it, but that just, again, keys me in that you're not quite paying attention to all the plants. And it's very difficult, I'm sure, because I own a lot of plants, to manage them. But again, when that's what you're there for, I feel like you should, but maybe that's just me being rude. But check the yellowing leaves, browning leaves, dead plants, if they're just leaving them in there. If the soil is soaking wet, check the soil, see if there's any fungus gnats flying around. Again, check for aphids. If you see any flying things on the leaves, if you see any of the spider mite webbing underneath and like in the soil and on the foliage. And the biggest thing is if you see white things, little white things. So I have also had it to where, again, that's what just happened with this plant. if you see little fuzzy white things that are crawling around that have like little antennas, they're actually very cute, okay? They're kind of cute. But if you see those fuzzy little things and they have little antennas, it's not cotton, it's not perlite, it's a mealybug, and you want to put it back. But I have had incidents where scale has been present on plants and I have not noticed it. So I always check the bottom of my plant pots too, because surprisingly, I have purchased plants from plant stores and you turn it over and it has a lot of live scale. I was so surprised. I think I have a Pinterest video of this where I bought a calathea. Shocking. It's actually Maranta. I bought a big Maranta pot. It was super beautiful. It actually did not make my move, which I was so super bummed about because it did really well in Washington. But the bottom of the pot had a lot of live scale. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. So then I started picking up some other plants that I had purchased from that store. Guess what? They had scale on it. Super weird, not a common thing, but if that can like somehow like climb around and get to your leaves, I don't know if they can do that, but you know, I just check around all the pot. Again, spider webs, one thing on the bottom. Spider webs, fine. But scale is something you don't want to mess with. It's very difficult to get rid of. I've only dealt with it once on a plant that I rescued from a friend and tried to rehabilitate it. It was a birds of paradise. I did not successfully get rid of the scale and mealybugs. And so I would just put the plant back. So again, yeah, just checking your plants thoroughly. Like if you're going to buy it, I would check it out thoroughly. And if you do purchase a plant and you didn't check it out, I would suggest isolating the plant for at least a week, spraying it down with Jack's Dead Bug Brew or a neem oil spray, something to clean the leaves off and just prevent, you know, a barrier. The Jack's Dead Bug Brew will kill off any of the pests on the plant that might be present, and you would have to do that for, you know, a couple weeks. But I would definitely isolate the plant. Can't tell you how many times I've come home with a plant and I'm so grateful that I isolated it because it ends up having some sort of issue. And so again, those don't happen often unless I buy from a plant store that is not like in my reputable sellers or a Lowe's or Home Depot plant. Honestly, those are the two places. So if I walk into a plant store and it's looking like Home Depot or Lowe's, I'm not going to purchase anything because Home Depot and Lowe's are not meant for that. They carry those things, but that's not their specialty. And so you do see a lot of dead and dying plants. I see them constantly there. They're just dead and dying in with the other plants. I've seen pests on them. I've seen plenty of mealybug issues there. Again, they're not paying attention to them because that's not their bread and butter. And so if I walk into a plant store that is their bread and butter and they look like that, it's a question for me. So another thing that I experienced at this plant store is just the amount of plants on top of each other. So in plant stores, I like to look around. Is it clean? Is it nice and maintained? Are they spaced apart well and like adequately? Because airflow does matter. If it doesn't have airflow and if your plants are all bunched up on each other, then it can cause the root rot because it's not drying out properly. They're not getting enough airflow. It also can cause like blight issues. Okay, my mic died, so I'm going to try to keep it on this, you know, like clip so I can still use it, but also see if it dies again. Proper airflow can cause blight issues. It can cause fungus issues. And so if you see like a plant with a lot of brown spots and they have like yellow rims all around them, just in the center of the leaves, that could possibly be, and most likely will be, a fungus issue. Totally can be taken care of. You can use the copper fungicide and just spray it down and wash your plant off, remove any of the leaves that are really affected by it. But again, it's like the whole thing is like, when I buy a plant, I buy the biggest, the bushiest, and the most beautiful. Okay, I've talked about this before on my channel, where I have given tips on what to look for when buying a plant. And so I look for the best, okay, because I am not a rehab person. I don't want to rehab plants. That's just not my thing. There are plenty of people out there that absolutely will. I don't want to because it's too much time for me. And so when I buy a plant, I want to bring it home. I want it to look nice and I want it to be healthy. And so when I go into a plant store, again, if I see that where they're all bunched up, which I've not seen that many times, I've seen it in a couple nurseries, but that kind of makes sense to me because it has a lot of airflow in it. and it's a big space. But when they're all bunched up together and you're having to pick up plants underneath to like, I literally was having to pick up bigger plants to see the smaller plants. It was just like a lot all on top of each other. Pests travel easy that way. You know, the blight issues, the root rot issues from not getting enough airflow in the correct way. Lighting, like how are they getting light? They did have grow lights in their store. And so it's like, but how are those plants getting that light? Basically, I don't feel like fighting or correcting all of those issues. And so that's what I don't want. And so I look against that. I look for better looking plants, healthy areas, and yes. So my mic is dying and I'm going to attempt to finish this, but it might be without a mic, so it might sound weird. But okay, so what I did get, I'm not going to share what the plant store was or where it was, but I will share what I got. So the problem with this is I was looking around and I saw the 2 wish list plants, which are right here in these baggies. I saw those guys. I absolutely wanted them, and so I got them. I did look them over and check them out, and I checked the area a little bit around them. Again, they were like a compound on top of each other in there, and so I did check them, and they did not seem to have any pests. So I'm just gonna have to speak up because my mic died, but I did check these plants out. I did not see any pests near them. Also, the thing is, like, if you go to a plant store and you're not with a plant person or whatever, like you bring a plant person and they start to notice things, then that's probably a good sign that something's wrong. So my sister was with me and she started pointing out how many fungus nests she was seeing and things flying around. I was like, oh great, was it thrips? And I was like, you couldn't have pointed that in the store sooner. But again, those are things that I understand are part of plant life and can totally be eradicated and fixed, but it's like at that like cost level of what I'm paying, do I want to do that? Like, am I willing to do that? Maybe you see a super, rare, uncommon plant for, a decent price, but it has issues. Maybe it is worth it for you. So it's all dependent on what you are willing to, put in. But I ended up getting this variegated heartleaf philodendron. I've been wanting one for a couple years now, and it's been on a list, of a wish to have plant, but they've just been so costly. And so I picked these up for $15. I got 2 of them. This is one of them. The roots looked really nice. It has a clear pot, so I was able to see that and didn't have to pick the plant up out of the pot. So that was really nice. And then this one as well, you can see the root system right there, and then the variegation on it looks to be really good. Now these are an unstable variegation, and so it's likely that some portion of it will go back to just not variegated. So like this leaf right here is unvariegated, but all of the new growth coming out is variegated. So my problem and why they're in the bag is when I got these to the hotel, I saw the other plant that I purchased had mealybugs. They had a bad infested mealybugs. And so I did not catch it. I did not see it at the store because I did not look. I just picked it up. And so that's at the cost of me. Like, I shouldn't have done that. I should have looked. But mealybugs transfer by a leaf touching. And so they don't fly or anything like that, like thrips do, which is really great. But if you do have a mealybug infestation, pull them away from all your other plants, check those around them, make sure that the foliage wasn't touching, and then treat them with an insecticidal soap. If it's a really bad infestation, like I've seen many people have bad infestations on Hoya. I think Hoya are just a typical mealybug plant, like they like those plants for some reason. But I have seen people do insecticidal dunks where they take the soap. I couldn't even tell you, like there's a ton of like insecticidal soaps that you could choose from. I use Jack's Dead Bug Brew, but they take it, they dilute it in water, and then they dunk the entire plant for a short time, pull it out, rinse it off, and then just continue the process. If you do have a plant where it's infested with mealybugs, you are going to want to take Q-tips and alcohol, like rubbing alcohol, and try to just get as many off as you can. They stick really well, let me tell you. So like they can make it through a hose pretty easily. I don't know why, but in my experience, they can just hold on for dear life. And so they like to hide in the nooks and crannies of your plant and on the new leaves, especially emerging. And so that's what happened with this plant. So I got a philodendron jopii. Again, it was a last minute addition to my cart. I was already gonna purchase these, had them in my cart, and just knew like, yeah, I'm just gonna get those two. But this plant hit me on the way out, like, you know, when you go to the store and you see a bunch of candies and stuff at the checkout line and you think like, yeah, I need that. This is what happened to me. This was like last minute, yes, I need that. And so that always gets you. But I got it to the hotel room, I set it down in its box right on the table, and I immediately, like, I do not know how I did not see this sooner, but immediately saw the mealybugs. They were covering the new petiole that was being pushed out, which I didn't even notice it had a new leaf coming out, which is awesome. But it was covering it. And then the leaf did emerge, and guess what I found is a ton of mealybugs inside. So my husband actually saw it, and he's like, oh my gosh, they're all over this. And so yes, they were all over it. And so I, again, did not bring it straight home. I put it in the hotel. It had already touched the other plants, so like that was that. But that's why I sprayed them and I've isolated them. I put them in the little baggies like this. But I brought them home, rinsed them off, used Jack's Dead Bug Brew, and it's just been sitting in this baggie. Now I probably need to go out and treat it because I just treated this last week and I have not treated it this week. But how did I treat it this week? Maybe I did. I don't remember. But if you do have mealybugs, you will want to consistently do that. So signs of mealybugs, they are a sap eater, just like many of the other pests that you have on your plants. And so this is the thing too, is like if you notice a lot of the foliage at the plant store looks like it's missing chunks. I always like to say that because it looks like it's just taken out little squares, like it's a pixel or something. It's very pixelated, like the bugs are just eating that chlorophyll in the leaf. And so if you notice that, where it's a really coppery tone or silvery and it's missing a lot of little squares, like something's just eating it out, and they were becoming see-through, then that's usually a thrips or mealybugs or scale or something issue like that, pest-wise. And so it's probably a good idea to just put it back. I don't want to deal with thrips. I hate dealing with thrips. I definitely don't want to deal with mealybugs, but here we are. And so I would isolate the plant, and that's what I've been doing. I just put it in the bag. I have not checked to see if it has more mealybugs. I did a rinse, initially, and I think I see that. That might be one. I don't know. It's also now like it's in sphagnum moss, so I can't tell if that's just a moss or if it is. But you do want to treat it pretty consistently for like a month straight is what I say, just to be on the safe side, because mealybugs, their life cycle is different, just like any other pest, where you could kill off the mothers and then they'd already laid eggs and then those eggs hatch. And so you need to eradicate that issue and basically eradicate them until they can like stop laying eggs, pretty much. And so hopefully you can do that in 1 or 2 rounds of it. But sometimes if they really are in all the nooks and crannies, it's super hard. So I would just definitely isolate it and make sure that, the pest situation is resolved before you put it back with your other plants. I can definitely tell that this is not resolved because I do see one currently moving on the leaf. And so it's going to be a longer process for this one, which is such a bummer because if it was $25, and again, it was not a plant that I really wanted, nor did I need it. But I just thought the foliage was really cool, and I've seen them in really large forms, and I just thought it would be fun to have that plant. They did have larger ones available, but they were way more costly, and so it's still, I think, a more uncommon and rare plant. So I did pay $25 for it, way more than the 2 variegated heartleaf philodendrons. And so I will hold on to it and try to eradicate the issue. but it is a bummer to bring home a plant like that. And again, it's just one of those things where I have to learn to look and take my own advice. So those are my tips for looking at plant stores and, you know, bringing plants home. Again, it is kind of hard, and maybe it's harsh of me to say this, but again, if I'm paying for a plant, I really do want it to be, like, you know, well maintained and taken care of, and not just sold because you're trying to, you know, make money. And because a plant, you know, plants are very popular now and they can make money, but take a little care in plants, and that way when somebody brings it into their home, they're not going to be dealing with the pest issue and investing the rest of their collection. Because I have seen plenty where people get disheartened and don't want plants because of the pests. And again, pests do happen, but I don't want to buy a plant that has the pest like already visible. This was my fault because I did not look at the plant. But again, I've been into plenty of stores where I've not purchased plants because I have checked them out and looked. So those are just things to remember when you're buying a plant. Hopefully this is helpful. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had this experience where you've been really excited about a plant and then you get it home and it's like a bummer because you realize that it has pests. Again, I waited to purchase these plants until I found a non-pest, you know, pest infestation one, because again, I have seen this plant in a plant store several times over the last 2 years and have not purchased it because of that. But let me know in the comments what you think, what your red flags are at plant stores, and make sure to subscribe. See you next time.